The second half of Attack on Titan's final season had a lot of things happen. From murder to betrayal to time travel to slavery to rumbling to thigh shots to murder again. And to top it all off, pure unadulterated Black Air Force energy. Shout out CJ, one of the funniest dudes on this platform. But for this video, I obviously want to focus on Annie and her return, because I feel like she's been a victim of a little something I'd like to call alliance association. In both the manga and anime community, the Rumbling arc has been very divisive. While some people support the alliance, others support the Jaegerist. And some of those people on the Jaegerist side point out the flaws of those in the alliance and try to tear them down or say that they're poorly written. Annie, being a member of said alliance, was only bound to catch some shots too, with the main complaint being that she's far too selfish, therefore she's unlikable. But Annie putting her needs before everyone else isn't bad writing. It's the entire point of the writing behind her character. Her being an asshole not only adds to the story, but sets up for her growth throughout the Rumbling arc. Spoilers for the Attack on Titan manga ahead. You have been warned. Let's get started. Now, while being selfish is a major part of Annie's writing, I first want to bring up a smaller part of it that I feel goes unappreciated. Her being seen as special and the loneliness that comes with that. In chapter 71, we hear the story of Keith Shadis and how he believed himself to be special or chosen. To him, only those few were ever able to accomplish anything in the world. Of course, this is immediately disproven by Carla, who says that everybody is already great because they were born into this world, which is an amazing moment. The only problem is that not everybody else feels the same. More people subscribe to Keith's way of thinking. So throughout the story, we see different special or chosen characters emerge. We already have Annie for one, and on top of that, there's Eren, Zeke, Reiner, and Armin. Now, what is the difference between Annie and the rest of these guys? She has a vagina. Anyway, the actual difference between them is that all of them struggled with the weight of being chosen at first. A part of Eren's arc throughout the pre-time skip is him coming to terms with the fact that he isn't special. Reiner also had to come to terms with the fact that he wasn't special and took on a persona to try and act like he was. Zeke was being forced to become the savior of the Eldian Empire by his parents, and he failed to live up to their expectations. And Armin, after the war at Shiganshina, spends most of his time hating himself and wishing Erwin was brought back instead. Annie, on the other hand, picked up on things quickly and was more than able to live up to the expectations given to her. So much so that her dad felt confident she could kill someone with her martial arts skills alone when she was just a child. With that being the case, and with her being an Eldian on Marley, where her worth as a person was only judged by how efficiently she could kill someone, Annie never cared about anything. She didn't care about herself, the people around her, nobody. This left her very much alone during that time, something that would go on to become a reoccurring thing for her. She was the only one who was capable of sneaking in and out of the royal capital. She was the only one to attack the Survey Corps on their expedition. She fights against the Survey Corps by herself when she's discovered. And she crystallizes herself when she's about to be eaten, and she's left alone until Hitch and Armin start visiting her. Which is why her father's words were so important to her. Because for the first time in her life, Annie felt like she wasn't alone. After that moment, life became something worth living to Annie. It had meaning. But the timing of this could not have been any worse, because as we know, Annie was just about to be shipped off to Paradis with the mission of reclaiming the founder. And as Reiner points out, Annie can't just come home with nothing to show for it. She has to complete her mission. So if you take Annie's skill set and put her on a mission where she can kill freely in order to get the job done, and then add on the fact that she's now more motivated than ever to get back home to be with her family, that is the creation of a very ruthless and selfish character. And that is what makes her such a great first villain. Even without all the knowledge we get on her later, upon her introduction, Annie immediately goes against the theme of the greater good that could be found in early AOT. A lot of the series at this point was about establishing what it means to be a soldier, or putting the needs of humanity over your own desires. That's what it means to dedicate your heart after all. Annie doesn't care about that though. She's above playing soldier. She believes all of that stuff is pointless. She does not hesitate to put her needs and safety over others. But I don't think Annie is a good villain just because she opposes the themes of the story, but also the impact she has on our characters. Slight disclaimer, for this section I'm only going to be talking about how she affects the main trio and not anybody else. Cause when you think about it, she doesn't really have much of a connection with anyone else outside of EMA, except for Levi. She turned his whole squad into a pack. That shit was sad. Anyway, Eren. Eren starts out as one of the characters who truly embodies the theme of the greater good. He wants to rid the world of Titans and free the people within the walls to explore the outside world. He wants to prove that humans can do more to Titans than just fear them or hide away from them. Eren is essentially the embodiment of humanity's rage, as Mikasa herself said when she first saw his Titan form. So in order to act on all of this pent-up emotion, he enlists in the military and tries to join the Survey Corps. Meanwhile, Jean, on the other hand, is constantly shit-talking him in his dreams and telling Eren that fighting for the greater good is pointless. And Eren spends so much time fighting with Jean over their disagreements that he never takes the time to actually think about what that greater good he's fighting for actually is. Until Annie shows up and asks him,
なぜかこの世界では巨人に対抗する力を高めた者ほど巨人から離れられる。どうしてこんな茶番になると思う？
This is such a simple question, and yet it's so big because she has a really good point here. And neither Eren nor us, the audience, even bothered to think about that.
Actually, Sailor, I thought of it. Shut up!
Annie shows Eren that this dream of his may not be all it's cracked up to be, which is something that ends up coming true. Because of what others think is for the greater good of humanity, Eren himself is almost sacrificed. And when he comes home from their expedition, Eren sees kids who were just like him and Mikasa watching the scouts come home. And he cries, because even though he never lost hope as a child looking on, as a soldier on the inside, he now understands how painfully frustrating expeditions can be. She also teaches Eren how to fight since he was interested in learning, a fighting style that Eren still uses even towards the tail end of the manga. For Mikasa, Annie forces her to become a better soldier. Listen, I know for some of you it may be surprising to hear that Mikasa has a character arc in the pre-time skip and she's not just Eren crazy, but hear me out. Mikasa's arc starts with her being incredibly selfish, just like Annie, and only caring about the people she loves, aka Eren and Armin. Then, once she believes Eren to be dead, she takes command of the group and then runs off ahead of everybody on a suicide charge. And she realizes this. She understands that she took charge and didn't bother to take responsibility for the people following her. And that's when she realizes that as the strongest one there, she has a responsibility to be the best she can for them. Which, by the way, when Eren and Reiner talk about the responsibility of strength, that was the same time when Annie was formally introduced, just saying. But because Mikasa made a mistake that temporarily cost the Survey Corps their best soldier in her first fight against Annie, it made her look in the mirror, learn from her mistakes, and grow to be better. Notice how in the scene where Annie is discovered, Mikasa is composed and takes initiative instead of freaking out like she did last time. Lastly, there's Armin, and Annie's effect on him was pretty simple. Armin always wanted to go outside of the walls, like Eren did, and when he did, Things did not go like they did in his books. But it wasn't like he could just go home crying or anything. His friends depended on him to help them, so he had to figure out how he could do that. He wasn't very strong physically, but he could contribute mentally. And thanks to his encounters with Annie, he found out the best way he could help is by becoming a monster himself, sacrificing the honest life he had before and cooking up schemes to help them get the upper hand. Eren couldn't even conceive attacking someone he considered a friend for next to no reason, but it was Armin who put the plan together to try and drag out the female Titan, and it worked. There's a reason why Armin was the first to understand why Erwin was the one leading the scouts, but honestly, that's another discussion I'll save for my upcoming Erwin video. For now, let's move on to the main topic of contention, Annie's arc during the rumbling. The last time we see Annie in the story, outside of a few glimpses at her in the crystal here and there, we see that her selfish way of thinking isn't resolved before she's taken down. In fact, she thinks about how badly she wants to go home one more time while crying. So when she comes back and we learn everything about her upbringing, that selfish side of her is still there. And this is where a big misconception that I've seen about Annie starts to pop up. I've seen people say that despite Annie being as selfish as she is, Isayama is still asking the audience to feel sorry for her by guilt-tripping them with her backstory. But that is not what he's doing at all. Hitch tries to give Annie the easy way out by asking her if she murdered all of those people for the sake of stopping the rumbling, for the greater good. And Annie tells her, no, I didn't care about any of that. All I wanted to do was go back home to my father. I understood that life was precious after what my dad said to me before I left. And I still did all of those awful things. And you know what? I would do all of them all over again if it meant I got to see him. Right off the bat, Isayama is letting us know that we shouldn't feel bad for Annie because she doesn't care about our sympathy. She continues to act this way for a while, as she only works with the Alliance to try to get back to her dad before Marley is stomped out, and after it's made clear to her that she won't be able to do that her dad is going to die regardless, she wants to leave the group. The rest of the Alliance tries to stop her, and so she asks them once again, if I tried to kill Eren, would you be able to sit back and watch? Only this time, she's not asking to try to point out the flaws in the Alliance's way of thinking like she did during the campfire. She's asking this because she doesn't want to fight with her friends anymore. And this is the start of Annie's redemption. And it's not like it comes out of nowhere either, because even though Annie was a murderer, and there are times where she even took pleasure in doing so, there were also things that she didn't take pleasure in doing. Like when she took off Marco's ODM gear and left him for dead on the roof. During the cleanup, she goes out of her way to go back to his body and apologize repeatedly for what she did. It was obvious she didn't want to do it, but she had to in order to clean up after Reiner and Bertolt, since they were both dumbasses. Honestly, fixing their fuck-ups in itself was something that Annie didn't like doing, but I digress. There was also the time where she could have killed Armin to avoid her having ever being caught in the first place, but she didn't do it. And she wonders why, and the answer is because they're her friends and she cares about them. At first, she would criticize Reiner and Bertolt for becoming friends with their enemies, but the more time she spent with them, the more she opened up to them. We've already gone over how important it was for Annie to feel like she wasn't alone, and the scouts made her feel at home. Case in point, her relationship with Eren. Even though she was meant to take Eren back to Marley to have him be eaten, she still befriended him and opened up to him more than anyone else. Or there was also the time where she made sure to save Connie from a Titan when she could have just let him die. She misses those days and wishes she could have them back, but in her mind, it's too late. Things will never go back to how they used to be. All of this emotion leads to her conversation with Kiyomi on the boat. Kiyomi talks about how guilty she feels about bringing Eren and Zeke together in the first place. And Annie asks her, if you could do it all over again, would you just sit back and watch the people of Paradis die? A throwback to what she told Hitch when she first woke up about not having regrets, although now it looks like she's suffering from some. Her friends are all more than likely about to die, and she didn't realize how badly that would hit her until it was too late. At first, Kiyomi echoes this sentiment. She's also someone who didn't know what she had until it was gone. And then Gabby and Falco interrupt and say that they're leaving at the cost of the ship, and Annie freaks out on them about how reckless they're being. But Kiyomi looks at her and tells her that she doesn't mind the ship sinking. She would much rather that than have to face any more regrets. And that resonates with Annie. So despite the fact that she lost her reason to keep fighting, she still chose to continue, doing it all for the sake of her friends. That is the point of Annie's character arc, going from selfish to selfless by the end of the story. Her being so self-centered at first only highlights how selfless Annie becomes at the end. Hell, this moment is made even more important by the fact that Annie saw herself as weak, or someone who gets swept up in the flow. When she came back, it wasn't like she was just going along for the ride. It was because she specifically chose to do it. And the story rewards her in her choice by letting her reunite with her dad. People saying that she needed to die or something, I just don't understand that. That would completely go against her arc. Even if she did end up sacrificing herself for them, that still wouldn't be a great way to end it, in my opinion. Then again, some people in this community have no problem with saying that characters doing something well within their character is bad writing, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, huh? Honestly, the only criticism that I can understand is not seeing her apologize to Levi for what she did to his squad. Like I said, they were turned into a pack. I can totally understand why people would want to see that, but outside of that, I think Annie's character was handled pretty well. But what did you think about how Annie was handled? Let me know down in the comment section below. I mentioned it earlier in this video, but I got an Erwin video coming soon, then my Cinder video after that, and then we finally talk about the final chapter of AOT for some much needed closure. So if any of that stuff interests you, then you may as well subscribe to the channel, Forehead. And you know what? You may as well like the video while you're down there as well. Thank you all for watching. I shall catch you all later. Stay safe. Bye-bye.